Hello, I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things Certified Financial Planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And in today's podcast, we are talking all things CISI Level 7 case study assessment and how to become a certified financial planner in the UK. And I am joined by a very special and probably very excited guest, hopefully very excited, who has recently passed his Level 7 case study and become a certified financial planner. The case study he passed on his very first submission. So, Paul McCabe, who is a chartered and a certified financial planner from Acumen Financial Planning. Hello and welcome.
Good afternoon, Jackie. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you on board. And we are going to get into the nitty gritty of all the ups and downs of your Level 7 case study in one moment. But before we get into all of that, just give us a little potted history of how you got into the financial planning profession.
Stumbled into it like everyone else does,
Yes.
Jackie, anyone else that you speak to. Such a common theme, that, isn't it? I need to take you back to 1998, which wasn't yesterday, sadly. It would be May 1998, where I was desperately trying to cling on to another year at school if they'd let me stay any longer, because I had lots of free periods and I was playing football all day with my pals, and somebody was saying, you've reached the end of the sixth year, Paul, you're going to have to leave. So at that time, I'd been working in a pretty well-known golf shop in Edinburgh, and that was part-time at the weekends. And left school in the May, Jackie, and just thought, well, I'll just go and try a career in golf if I can. And I don't think it was ever going to be at playing for a living, sadly. But I thought, well, maybe I could be a kind of teaching professional, or just have a career in a game I absolutely loved. But you're working weekends, you're in retail. It wasn't going as well as I hoped, and bumped into a pal from school in October, and the company will remain nameless, but he was working for a company that ended in Equitable and started with Scottish. So and their head office, and still is, was in Edinburgh. And he said, well, they're recruiting. And my opening questions, Jackie, were, what's it like? He said, well, don't work weekends. The pay was pretty much double what I was on at the time. He told me the nights out were pretty good, and the canteen was excellent. So,
You're in.
What was there any more questions to ask here, really? And I had an interview, I think, in the late November with a chap in that interview that's still a pal to this day, which is just great about our industry, isn't it? And I had about a 30-mile journey home, and by the time I got home, there was a very welcome. This is when we all had answering machines in the house. Of course, Jackie, the youngsters listening to this won't understand what we're talking about. And there was a very welcome message there saying, congratulations, you can now come and become a customer services representative with Scottish Equitable. And I don't know why, I always remember this date, but I started my career in financial services just around the corner on Monday, the 7th of December, 1998. And we can get into other parts of the career if you wish, but never really looked back since then.
Wow, fantastic. And when did you join Acumen?
I joined Acumen on the 5th of December 2022. So I celebrate my 2-year anniversary tomorrow.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so tell me how you found out about the CFP and why you decided to undertake it.
Yeah, I've always been aware of it, Jackie, but being a true kind of CII boy, up until, a year ago, that was my pathway to qualifications. I became chartered in 2016. And I guess it just must have been habit. I was aligned to the CII, and that was that. The real changer was, yes, I was aware of other individuals that were coming certified. I used to work with Amir Roshalima, who we all know very well, many moons ago, and been watching his progress very closely. So he'd gone down that route, and the real game changer for me was joining Acumen, because they're very much aligned. I promised myself I would mention that they're accredited Firm of the Year this year, if no one else knew, Jackie. So I promised I would get that one in. So thank you for that. I sat down at, David Gow, who's my, boss, line manager and director at Acumen. Sat down with Dave a year ago, for the KPI review, and he was just like, what are the next steps for you? And I was like, Dave, quite happy at Chartered, if I'm honest with you. And he's like, well, I think in terms of your own progression, I think this is a qualification you would really value. And, why don't we just pop it down as something that you can go away and investigate? And I went, okay. So, contacted Chris Morris and Sally Plant and bounced this off them. And then it became apparent to me, Jackie, and I think this will be important for some of your listeners, is there is this pathway. If you've been aligned to the CII like I was, then there is this pathway that you can, partake in about, I'm making it up now, Jackie, let's say 26 hours worth of CPD or something like that, to what the CISI call these professional assessments. And then that, in a long story short, kind of gets you aligned to being level 6 with the CISI. So I did that in spring last year, and got that, fairly quickly. And, again, you've got half your CPD for the year as well, which was just an added bonus, so, and everything was starting to come in front of me, Jackie. I was like, all right, there's nowhere else for you to go now, Paul. You're going to have to see this through, because it was all, there was, I think as soon as the path became too hard or it was impossible, well, I've tried, and, we can report back to Dave that this isn't for me. Yeah. Everything was going well. And I remember having a really good conversation. I phoned, Rhiannon Morgan, who's also one of our directors in Aberdeen. And I said to Rhiannon, like, I'm where I need to be from the professional assessment piece now. Should I do this? And, everyone at Acumen on the exam front is incredibly supportive, Jackie. And she gave me an honest assessment of how difficult it would be. And we'll talk about Rhiannon shortly as well, but, offered every bit of support that she possibly could as well. So that would have then, I suspect, led me to contacting yourself, because it was certainly, everyone in Acumen was saying as well, you need to contact Jackie and get involved in your coursework as well. And then, you're at a point where you're counting down the days to when the 10-week clock commences.
Well, that's very kind of Rhiannon to give you an honest assessment. And I think, that's part of the reason why I wanted you to come on the podcast, to share, your honest assessment of how things went, because everybody's journey is different, isn't it? And so tell me about when you first got your case study. Obviously signed up for a course with me and you got your case study. Did you have a kind of, had you decided on an initial approach? I mean, were you kind of doing it an hour a day, or were you blocking out big blocks of time? What was your initial approach to start with?
I'd committed to take it very seriously, I think would be my first observation on it, and thinking about, taking myself back to those days when the case study was released. But with no word of a lie, Jackie, if you're gonna pay, bluntly speaking, for somebody's services, my take on it was to follow your guidance to the letter, and that's not for the purposes of this podcast either. That was, if you ask for help and you're given guidance. I mean, I'll give you a really good example of, I was desperate to use Voyant. I love Voyant, and I use Voyant every day. And, I had a couple of conversations with you about that, and you were saying, Paul, you can do this if you like, but you're really increasing your chances of not getting through this, so don't. And I think that's an example of, if you're going to, work with a professional that knows this inside out, then for goodness sake, take their advice and follow the guidance. So, to answer your question, my first mistake, Jackie, and I've chosen this podcast to admit this to you, because I've never been brave enough to tell you up until this point. But when I enrolled for the coursework, I made this terrible assumption. I don't know why, but I honestly expected your coursework to start on the same day that the case study was released. So I then log in, which I'd done before. And the first little bit of advice I can give to anyone that goes down the CFP route and works alongside yourself is try and watch all the videos as quickly as you possibly can. And even when you're not working, because I logged in, Jackie, and then I realized, oh my goodness me, this is where the panic station started, is there was all this free coursework that I could have been doing and listening to.
Yes.
So when you met this panicked individual at our first one-to-one, and I can remember that session vividly, that was feeling that panic, is that I felt so behind already. And no, I mean, to answer your question properly, I boxed out as much days as I could. You were really keen, to get through the kind of 5 days piece that I remember, Jackie. So I boxed that off as well. And yeah, just went into my diary and set aside as many hours as I could feasibly possibly do to make sure that the time would be allocated properly to this massive task.
Yes. And which you had, where were your ups and downs in this process of that's a bit of a loaded question for our listeners. Paul probably isn't going to be talking to me by the end of this podcast.
Yeah.
Come on, confession time.
I've just, what I've done? I've just sat back in my chair here and let out a kind of big, you probably heard it, like, where do I start here? I think the timepiece really got on top of me, Jackie. I really valued the group check-ins, if I'm honest. And in hindsight, they couldn't come quick enough for me, because you're quite a few weeks in before you do get the group check-in, if I'm right or wrong. And I think at that point realised that I was doing okay. I hate the idea of being comforted by, maybe being ahead of others, but rightly or wrongly, I kind of got that sense that I wasn't ahead or behind. I was just where I need to be. But to properly answer your question, I felt like I was falling behind in the web-based tutorials, and I felt this panic of time was because I just, hadn't seen the kind of pre-course work that I could have and had time to actually get stuck into, Jackie. So I got immensely panicked by time. But as time went on and I started building some momentum, my panic started easing. It's fair to say the journey I went on, Jackie, you speak to different people, but my kind of disaster came early doors, reaching those points that yes. I believe everyone does, that I can't do this.
Yep.
I'm going to have to give up. I feel so very fortunate that came in the first 2 or 3 weeks for me.
Yes.
And then I'll talk about it later or whenever. But, I very much, on top of your own services, I very much then developed a kind of support network around me that I can go on to speak about. And I needed that. I think what any individual needs to do is, if you're going through this quite easily and you're finding it great, if you're not, you then need to think about what other support network you can build around you to help.
Yes. And, everybody's different, aren't they? So as we've said before, everybody struggles without a shadow of a doubt, me included, when I did my CFP lots of years ago. You doubt yourself, you doubt your own capabilities. Somebody said to me, I don't even know why I'm in this profession, because I feel I'm making a right hash of this. And we, having a support network, having a structure, and obviously somebody keeping behind you, pushing you along, as well as that support network, that's where it really comes into play. But you've got to find, everybody has, gaps in their knowledge or gaps in their understanding, and you've got to find out where those are. And quite often we don't find where they are until it kind of happens, do we? And then all of a sudden you're down this hole and you just think, oh my goodness me, I didn't realize it was going to be like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. it was petrifying, and tough. But I was so comforted that I didn't get the feeling people were just saying things to make me feel better. I spoke to yourself, I spoke to Rianne, anyone that's done it. It's like this is the toughest assessment you will ever face. And at a point, I was going to say that I'm glad that the tough part of my journey came early doors, Jackie, because I use this word loosely, okay, but to encourage people that are listening to this as well. There were parts of this I thoroughly enjoyed. I am fortunate that my colleagues in Acumen have paraplanner support and admin support, so I'm not allowed to write reports anymore, Jackie. Okay, so that's the way it should be. But back in the day, when you were doing everything for yourself, I really enjoyed report writing, and it was shared with me that I was able to write reports in a kind of layman terms, jargon-free language, and reading the examiner's assessments or speaking to yourself, it seemed that would be a massive factor why I managed to get through this, because when I was able to get past the part that caused me so much bother, which was Excel and building the cash flow model and F formulas, when I was able to get past that, I thoroughly enjoyed writing up this plan. I was able, like many good suitability reports, I was able at the end of it, like a carpenter looking at a table, I was kind of able at the end of it to look at my report and, pass or fail. I was very, very proud of the work that was created in those 57 pages that I managed to then write up. And I'll use the word loosely again. I did enjoy that part once I got past my own personal disaster.
Yes. And your nemesis was the Excel spreadsheets, wasn't it?
I just twitched when you said that, Jackie. It was.
But it's, do you think that, I say to everybody, there's going to be pain at some point. And for most people, to be honest, it is the Excel spreadsheets. But how did you overcome that? What did you do yourself? I mean, you had your support network. Obviously, you had the course content and the one-to-ones, as well as the group session. What else did you do to kind of go, right, this is just happening? How did you keep pushing through at those tough points?
Kept watching the videos. I mean, there was times, Jackie, that I was, using the kind of, I don't know what the right term is, but the scroll bar to go back to hear you. I mean, we were seeing an awful lot of each other at one point, shall we say, on the videos. And listen, that's what they're there for, So yep, I kept on going back to basics, and I desperately was trying to write out their formulas through your guidance. I got the concept of it. That bit wasn't. I got what I was trying to achieve. But to write up in our formula, I just obviously wasn't of that mindset. So I kept on watching the videos. I kept on digging in. I'm a golfer, Jackie, and lots of bad things happen on a golf course to us. It's like the hardest game in the world. So you're not like typically made of nature that just gives up on the seventh hole and walks in. So I never had that. And you said that to me at one point. There's no giving up round here. And at that point, I that wasn't crossing my mind. I certainly reached that point, don't get me wrong. I'll tell you a funny story about that in due course that involves my wife, but I just kept on going. And I took a couple of days off here and there just to clear my head. And then Angela, my wife, eventually said, well, what about speaking to Graham? I've got a friend who basically he goes to work at 9 o'clock and finishes at 5 o'clock, and the whole of his day will involve working with Excel. So, we talk about that support network, and I just went and got another perspective and put my hand up for a little bit of help to say, well, what can you do to help me with this? And eventually got moving again, So, but I think I can only speak for myself, but I think at times you just need to accept that you will be desperate to get moving and you maybe can't. And you just have to sit on that for 2 or 3 days or however long it takes before the wheels start turning again. That was my experience.
Yes. And I think, lots of people have said to me, oh, Jackie, can I just kind of knock it out in a few days? And I kind of go, nope. And it's exactly for those reasons, isn't it? Because, we know that everybody struggles at some point during that 10 weeks. And it's a case of looking at it and kind of going, actually, I do need a couple of days off. I need to go on the golf course or walk the dog around the park or cold water swimming, as some people around here do as well. But whatever it is, that you need to clear your head because your subconscious needs to do some of the heavy lifting, doesn't it? And so you've got to give yourself that opportunity and that breathing space to actually, I think it's more than just that. It's about letting your subconscious start to think critically about what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, what is it exactly that these clients want from you.
Yeah. 100%, Jackie. Yeah, it was these breathers that just kind of gave you that, that break that you needed, as you say, to just come at it from a different way. Because I was constantly waking up at 3:30, and then I had to write something by the bedside, or to check that on the spreadsheet the next day. And did I get the net contributions right on the pension contributions? Did I do gross? And oh my God, have I projected that? Your mind just, you talk about doing it, and then I think your term is put it in a drawer for 5 days or something like that, but it's the same point that you and I are making just now. You just need that time to say, I need a break from this. It's intense. It's tough. It's meant to be tough.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It is a tough one. But just before we get on to, how it's changed you, apart from being traumatized, give us a rough flavour of how many hours it took you from start to finish to complete the assessment.
Yeah, I just had it's a really tough one, isn't it? I wish that, Jackie, again, doing it, and I'd encourage Stephen this to put it in the coursework, Jackie. You get people to log it, because it would be fascinating, wouldn't it, to know the accurate answers. But listen, we had 10 weeks, 7 days. I mean, there's 70 days there. I think I had a 5-day holiday in there. I had a few days where I just took the breaks that we were talking about. So there was 15 of the 70 days that I don't think I was working on it, roughly speaking. So some days I'd be working more than 5 hours, and some days I'd be working less than 5 hours. But I mean, you even do that 5 hours times the 55 days I was working on it. I mean, it comes to an astonishing 275 hours, and that feels about right, Jackie. Again, I can't dismiss the time that I was working on the case study or working on it and wasn't making any progress. That's still time I was allocating to this.
Yep.
And not moving forward. But I was moving forward, because even I'd say that to Angela, I've just been here for 4 hours and haven't done anything. And she immediately would come back to me and say, but you have, because you're in the process of figuring this out. And that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's absolutely spot on.
Absolutely. And looking back now, he says, phew. Looking back on the whole experience, and now being a certified financial planner, congratulations again on passing your very first submission.
Thank you.
How do you think, has it changed how you approach giving advice to clients, or how you work with your colleagues at Acumen?
The easy and obvious answer to that question is yes. And that is the truthful answer. But all of these examinations for me, Jackie, in the 26-year journey that I've been on, and the privileged position I hold in financial services, the one word that comes to mind for me is redemption. I mean, coming back to school days now, I mean, I chose every wrong subject I possibly could have, being a teenager. And interestingly, the two hires that I left with were English and accounts and finance, which, I kind of feel good about that in a sense. Well, there was maybe some kind of directing pathway to that. But to be at level 7 now, kind of honours degree equivalent, I believe I'm told it is, it's total redemption. And I feel so lucky to have put the school days right, if I'm honest. I never really questioned my intelligence. I maybe questioned my commitment at times. But what a privilege, to get into an industry that says, you know what, there's a second chance. And if you want to apply yourself and if you want to study again, then the doors, not every career has that. I'm not answering your question. I'll try to now. I think what it's given me, it's the old story, Jackie. You've never sat in front of a GP and such like and asked for a list of their qualifications, and clients don't do that with us, okay? And that's fine. But for the advisors out there that say, I don't think my clients would care if I was more qualified or not, they're missing the point, and they're missing the point because it is actually the confidence that it gives you. That's certainly the case for me. I've got a serious case of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, the usual that we as a society seem to be better at speaking about these days, which is good. It gives me confidence, not arrogance, but, to sit in front of a client and in your opening introduction, explain your title and who you are. It's a confidence piece. So I've always considered myself, and certainly the last few years, to be a holistic financial planner. And I would like to think I would, we always get clients that come to us with problems, don't we? I've got six pensions. I would like them to be one, fine. But actually what you need, Mr. or Mrs. Client, is, income protection, because that's your biggest issue. So I don't, hone in always to what the clients want to speak about, and that's our duty. That's the skill set that we bring. I think with the Hayley Taylor case study, Jackie, the bit that came to mind with me was she was divorced and had a real concern about, long-term care. And I think that is definitely what has added on to me to be able to go and do that type of research now and to say, well, what would in home care cost? What would nursing care home? I had never gone to those depths before. So I think that's an example of where I think it's pushed me past a point to be a more skilled advisor.
Yes. And do you think when you're in the client meeting and you're, showing them a financial plan or talking through their financial plan with a cash flow, do you think that it enables you to ask better questions, maybe see potential other problems coming down the line that you might not have seen before?
It has to. It has to. The kind of commitment that it takes and the time that we just talked about, you can't become as skilled as you do with Excel. You can't go to this in-depth analysis that you do with the case study without becoming better at the end. Before I got this pass mark, I said to anyone that would listen, I do, because at the end of the day, that's important, it's crucial, it's that word, it's that validation. But I was better because of it, having gone through the process.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. And so, Paul, we are nearly at the end of our podcast, so your trauma is nearly over. Thanks for the therapy session along the way. Can you give us some advice for those people who are starting out on their journey to become a certified financial planner today, maybe sitting on the fence and thinking about what they're going to do in 2025? Can you give us some tips about what your advice would be to them, please?
Do your very, very best. And I know this won't apply to everyone because we'll have business owners listening, fine. But generally speaking, my advice on the first piece would be make sure you get your employer on board. To be clear, for any of my Acumen colleagues that may go on to listen to this podcast, I didn't have that task because they are incredibly supportive. I mean, we've got, I think in our section of the business, we've got about 87 employees, Jackie, and honestly, on the intranet every week, there's another announcement about more staff getting through qualifications. So I can't think of an employer that's more qualification focused than Acumen, and hats off to them. What I mean by support is, if there's individuals listening to this that want to go down a CFP and their employer maybe isn't, as focused on that, sit them down, sell it to them. And, you're going to have to ask for support. And I think as you and I just established on 275 hours, I'm not even talking about financial support. I'm talking about asking for things like study leave. I would give serious consideration to study leave and at some point, and I think you'd be probably in a better place to answer this one, Jackie, but at some point consider taking a full 2 weeks off to get through this. I was seriously lucky with Acumen. They couldn't support me anymore on this for all sorts of reasons. I mentioned David Gow, I mentioned Rhiannon Morgan, my colleagues that sit next to me, they were incredible. So first and foremost, get your employer on board if they aren't already. Second piece, Jackie, we talked about a couple of times is have a real think about your support group. You and I know an individual who remain nameless, but I understand got through on his second submission, and after spending half an hour on the phone with you, getting a little bit of help. And the point I'm making here is he appeared to do this all by himself. And I'm in awe of this individual because I can't imagine getting through this without the support of likes of yourself. I would appoint an emotional and mental well-being officer, who in this case was my wife. So she was there for all the ups and downs. The funny story I was going to tell you earlier on, Jackie, was with Angela and I on the Thursday. We got the results. We went out for a glass of wine locally, and Angela then admitted to me that she was very, very close to suggesting that maybe this all wasn't worth it. But thankfully, she didn't. But it was, I think it was a rude awakening to what you put the people around you through. So, yes. Everyone needs to bear that one in mind as well. I would, in terms of the support network, I would try and find yourself someone who has recently completed CFP. In my case, that was Rhiannon Morgan, who I've talked about already, colleague and director. And let's put it this way, Jackie. Rhiannon gave me time that she didn't actually have to give, but she did. And she was incredibly supportive. On the further support piece, I talked about my friend who kind of just lives in Excel every day. He was really useful and supportive to me as well. And I talked earlier on about my skills of being a good report writer, but if you're not, speak to your paraplanner, maybe purchase some software that can help you write it. I, as you know, Jackie, last point on the second tip, I relied quite heavily on the example, the sample plan. And I know we talked a great deal of length about this. You're like, be very, very cautious with this, Paul. And I understood perfectly why you offered that guidance, but I seem to have the skill to read something, whether it be an explanation of the state pension, for an example, Jackie, and then I had an ability to rewrite that in my own words. I completely accept that once you've read a passage, then trying to get that passage out of your mind might be quite a challenge for people. But I did use the example plan. I liked the example plan. It kind of comforted me of what this thing is meant to look like in the end. So I used that as well. But I would also urge caution on that. If individuals are listening to this and don't think that they could read something and then rewrite it, avoid the sample plan. Yeah. Is that something you'd agree with as well, Jackie?
Yes, definitely. Because what we find is obviously the CISI has plagiarism software, and the risk is that you can't, like you say, read a paragraph or two, turn it into different language that is appropriate for your client in your case study. And essentially it becomes a template where you're just changing the figures for some people, and they're not really understanding why they're writing what they're writing. So they end up copying most of, some paragraphs in the sample plan, which of course then is picked up by the CISI's plagiarism software, and then it's sent back to you unmarked. And obviously after putting in all that effort, you definitely wouldn't want that to happen.
No, it's a good reference point. It's obviously in there to help and guide, and you're spot on. It worked for me using it and actually seeing what the layout looked like and where we're trying to head to, but completely get that. The last tip, Jack, if you're going to get involved in a training and support course like yourselves, I mean, my tip on it, if I was doing it all again, I would have, at the point I've alluded to already, I would have started as soon as I possibly could, as soon as I purchased it, and as soon as I had access to it. And I would, without commencing work, I would personally now go back and watch all the videos without even starting the case study. And then I would have had a better understanding of that landscape, as I call it, and where it was all heading. Because I just went, I wouldn't say I rushed to begin with, but as soon as I felt time skipping away from me, then I started to rush and panic. And I think if I had a better idea of, go back to that word again, the landscape, I think that would have comforted me.
Yes. I think sometimes you don't know the road ahead of you until, we have our first group session 2 weeks in. But it's not really until that time, if you haven't had chance to kind of take the cellophane off, then it's not until that point that you've then only got 8 weeks and you think, yikes, and you see, the whole path in front of you. And, that's like, you've beautifully articulated, the pressure starts to mount. And then, of course, you start to make mistakes, and then you get annoyed at yourself for making mistakes. And then you think, God, now I'm wasting my time. And then you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and, the whole thing starts to unravel a bit, doesn't it?
Oh, I'm so glad I can laugh now. It wasn't that so many moons ago, but yeah.
Well, you have done so brilliantly well. I'm so proud of everything that we've been through together over the last year. You are a testament to determination, your character, and also the support, both of your wife. I think you should give her a big cuddle for me, and the guys at Acumen. You are the total package now, Paul. Many, many congratulations from all of us here at Lockheed Consultants. Thanks so much for joining me for your podcast interview today. I'm sure this is going to be extremely useful to the many hundreds of people who tune in on a regular basis. So thanks once again.
I really hope it will be helpful. And Jackie, thank you so much for, I can now call myself a podder, I think, can I? Or is that just the host that can call themselves a podder? Is this, I'm maybe not a qualified podder yet. Yep. But no, to be honest, when you mentioned this to me, it's unimaginable to me that this would have been happening 6 months ago. So isn't it just wonderful, that progress that's been made? And thank you so much for your good wishes. That's very kind. Thank you.
It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to different people who have different experiences of gaining their Certified Financial Planner certification, or maybe developing the financial planning profession at large. If you know anybody who you think might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, then please do pass on our details. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. See you again soon. Bye for now.